Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again to sift through that pile of research and articles you've gathered, pulling out the really essential stuff. Today, we're looking at quite a figure, Vijay Mallya, a name that brings up, well, huge success, massive controversy. You've definitely seen the headlines. Maybe you've already made up your mind. But what if there's, more to it?
Exactly. And our goal here isn't about judgment. It's about understanding, really digging into all the different angles. We got some fascinating sources, including quite a big one, a recent, very detailed interview with Mallya himself. He'd been silent for years. So we're going to trace his path, that disciplined childhood, which might surprise some people, then the explosion of his business empire, the whole flamboyant image, and then, of course, the crash of Kingfisher Airlines and all the legal chaos that followed.
Yeah, we'll unpack the stories, maybe question some assumptions, and try to sort the facts from the noise. Let's get into it. You might need to rethink what you thought you knew. Okay, so to really get Vijay Mallya, we probably need to start before the headlines, right? Back at the beginning. What was that childhood actually like? People talk about a strict upbringing.
Oh, it's definitely not what you might expect given the later image. Born in Kolkata, grew up mostly in Bangalore, but then back to Kolkata for school and college. His father, a Dune school guy, apparently very smart, was big on education, really pushed it. Mallya even mentions his dad warning him, like, you won't step into my shoes if you're not good enough. Seriously.
Wow.
And get this, he started working as a management trainee at 17, still in college, for 400 rupees a month.
400 rupees, even back then.
Right. And he'd work full days after his classes, no pay rise. He even spent time as a paint factory foreman in England, actually mixing paint. That's part of his training. He pushes back hard on the idea he was spoiled. Says he didn't have fancy toys or cars, but just a second-hand Standard Herald.
The Standard Herald, okay.
Though he does admit, kind of cheekily, messing with the silencer to make it louder. He loved motor racing even then.
Huh. Okay, a little hint of the future, maybe. So, not exactly born with a silver spoon, despite the family business background.
Not at all. He really emphasizes self-confidence as the key lesson from that time, something he says he tells young people now.
And this intense focus, this almost scarcity-driven mindset, how did that shape him? Because it seems like a paradox, leading to such a, flamboyant business style later.
That's a really interesting point. It's like that tough, disciplined start actually gave him the nerve, maybe, the audacity to take those huge risks later. He felt perhaps that he could handle anything, that he could always fight his way out because he'd started with so little. It fueled a certain kind of confidence.
Then his father dies quite young, right?
Yeah.
When Mallya was only 27.
Yeah, his father was just 59. Suddenly, at 28, Mallya is chairman of the whole United Breweries Group, UB Group.
That's incredibly young to take over such a large company. How did he manage that transition? Did he shake things up?
Massively. It was a huge shift. He brought in a completely different management style. His father was very hands-on, apparently. Mallya went for decentralization, accountability. He started promoting professional managers from inside the company. And he really changed the age profile. He said the average age of regional directors dropped from like 60, 65 down to around 40 in about 5 years, bringing in younger blood, essentially.
Right, so new energy, new structure, and this is when we start seeing those iconic brands really take off. Kingfisher beer, for example, it had history, but he made it huge.
Absolutely. His first really big move, he says, was asking his father for 10 lakh rupees just to market Kingfisher. The label itself was old, 1857 apparently.
10 lakhs back then was still significant money for marketing.
Oh yeah. And remember, India had, and still has, strict bans on alcohol advertising. So he had to be clever. He basically pioneered surrogate advertising, like building a whole water business around the Kingfisher brand name so he could advertise that.
The Kingfisher water, mineral water, yeah?
Exactly. He gave the beer this whole personality. Fun, excitement, vibrant. It just clicked. Became India's #1 beer. He even became the face of it, in a way, the brand ambassador. Did public service ads, too, like, don't drink and drive.
That surrogate advertising thing is fascinating. It wasn't just getting around a rule. It was like building a whole lifestyle around the brand, wasn't it? What was the insight there?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
He understood you couldn't just sell the beer directly. You had to sell the idea of the beer, the good times. So by linking Kingfisher to sports, events, calendars, even water things people aspired to or enjoyed, he built this really strong emotional connection. It became part of the culture almost. It was a very smart way to navigate the restrictions in the Indian market specifically.
And McDowell's #1 whiskey, same kind of treatment.
Yep, similar playbook, gave it a strong identity, golden moments, McDowell moments. And the results were staggering. It became the world's largest selling whiskey. We're talking 32 million cases a year.
32 million. Wow.
And there's a bit of history there, too. His father made some shrewd moves back in '77. When Prime Minister Morarji Desai announced nationwide prohibition plans, lots of liquor companies panicked and wanted to sell cheap. Mallya's father was convinced prohibition wouldn't last, so he bought up several of these companies.
Smart bet.
Very. Prohibition did fail, and those acquisitions really set UB Group up for dominance later. Then Mallya himself bought Shaw Wallace in 2005 for $300 million. That cemented United Spirits as number one. Today, its market cap is nearly 1 lakh crores. That's, what, over 12 billion US dollars. Huge.
And he didn't just stick to India or alcohol, did he? He had global ambitions pretty early on.
He did. Back in 1988, he bought Burger Paint's global operations. His goal, he said, was to build India's first real multinational. They were operating in 25 countries. He did IPOs for parts of it in places like Jamaica, Kenya, Singapore, used that to pay down debt, bring his holding down to 51%. Then in '96, he sold the whole thing off, made a fat profit, as he put it. He apparently told his mother quite pointedly that this was money he'd earned himself, not just inherited.
Okay, so the empire is growing, becoming global. And alongside this, his public image starts to really form, that King of Good Times label. Did he create that, or did the media? What's his take?
He maintains the media created the flamboyant image and the King of Good Times tag. He points out that was originally the slogan for Kingfisher beer, not him personally.
Ah, interesting distinction.
Yeah, he reckons he got labeled flamboyant just because he was a young chairman, 28, who liked things young guys like cars, parties, music, sports. Unlike the older, maybe more staid business leaders of the time. He says he wasn't chasing headlines, but he did admit enjoying having a platform. Said he liked debating and drama back in school.
Maybe not chasing headlines, but definitely using high-profile platforms for branding. The IPL team, Royal Challengers, Bangalore, RCB, that wasn't just for fun, was it?
No, he's very clear on that. Buying RCB for $112 million was primarily a business decision. The main goal, promote Royal Challenge whiskey.
Right, another surrogate.
Exactly. He notes it's actually a very profitable business on its own now. And he remembers picking Virat Kohli, who was just coming out of the under-19s, for only 20 lakh rupees, saw the talent and energy early.
Yeah.
He also talks about RCB's fan engagement. They kept it going year-round, not just during the IPL season, built incredible loyalty, even though they haven't actually won the cup. It showed how to leverage sports branding in India on a massive scale.
And Formula One, Force India, same idea?
Partly branding, yes, but he says the core reason there was pride. Putting the Indian flag on the grid in F1. Pinnacle of motorsport, right. But yeah, definitely used it to advertise his brands too. It's like the West Indies cricket sponsorship back in '96.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Kingfisher on their shirts?
He chose them specifically because their vibe, fun, dancing, music, that swagger perfectly matched the Kingfisher brand.
Yeah.
Led to that jingle people still remember.
And we can't talk image without mentioning the Kingfisher calendar.
Definitely not. He teamed up with Atul Kazbecker, the photographer. The idea was an Indian version of the Pirelli calendar. Began this huge marketing thing, super exclusive, highly sought after. And it launched careers. Deepika Padukone, Katrina Kaif. They got their start there.
Beyond the brands, what about his personal stuff? The cars, the houses? He had quite a collection, didn't he?
He did, especially vintage cars. He talks about restoring them from basically wrecks. A 1931 PS Aero he actually raced in Singapore and won with. A Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, a 1903 Derrick. Apparently, those vintage ones are still in India because of export rules. For modern luxury cars, he says he only had a few in India. Mercedes, a Rolls, a Maybach. He denies owning a whole fleet.
Okay. And the Sky Mansion, that house on top of the tower in Bangalore.
Yeah, the bungalow lifted on the Kingfisher Tower. He says it started as a bit of a joke, actually, but it's still unfinished because of all the legal issues now. He also talks a bit about his parents. His mother supportive, educated, but frugal. His father quiet, taught him hard work, and crucially, how to read a balance sheet.
Okay, so we've seen the rise, the brand building, the image creation. It's an incredible story of success. But then comes the downturn. Kingfisher Airlines. What was the original dream there? How does it start so well?
The idea apparently came up around 2002, 2003 from the Damani brothers that used to run Damani Airlines. Mallya's vision was huge. Create the best flying experience India had ever seen. Really premium. Focus on comfort, safety, and also connecting smaller towns, routes that weren't being served well.
So premium, but also expanding connectivity?
Initially, yeah. It started as single class, sort of low cost, but with perks unheard of.
Yeah.
than in India, in-flight entertainment, actual meals included.
Yeah.
Big differentiators. Later, he added Kingfisher First, the business classic. He compares that now to what Indigo is doing with their business light offering. He was apparently obsessed with service standards, called passengers guests. He says for the first year, he got SMS updates daily from every airport manager on their on-time performance.
Wow, hands-on.
Very. And it worked for a while. By 2008, Kingfisher was the biggest airline in India, had something like 27% market share.
So, #1 airline in India. What went wrong? What was the tipping point?
Two big things hit almost simultaneously. First, the 2008 global financial crisis. Lehman Brothers collapsed, and the shockwaves hit India hard. Second, and maybe even more direct for an airline, crude oil prices just exploded. Went from around $60 a barrel to $140.
Ouch, that kills airline margins.
Especially in India. Because aviation turbine fuel, ATF, wasn't just hit by the global price, but also by really high state sales taxes. That's a key point. Even if global oil prices fluctuated, Indian airlines were often paying way more for fuel than competitors elsewhere because each state added its own hefty tax. It created this massive, almost uniquely Indian cost burden.
That state tax issue is really important context. And Mallya makes this claim, doesn't he, that he actually wanted to downsize in 2008. He says he went to the finance minister, then Pranab Mukherjee.
Yes, that's a major claim in his narrative. He says he proposed downsizing, laying off staff to cut costs, but was told no by the finance minister. According to Mallya, the minister promised bank support because the government wanted to maintain air connectivity and, crucially, jobs.
So he's suggesting the government kind of pushed him to keep going, implying some shared responsibility.
That's certainly the implication. He now says listening to the FM back then might have been a mistake,
Right.
given how things turned out. It definitely complicates the narrative of who's responsible for the airline's failure.
Which brings us to another controversial move, buying Air Deccan. The story usually goes he just wanted to get around that 5-year rule for flying internationally. What was that rule and what does Mallya say?
Right, the 5-year rule. Basically, Indian Airlines had to operate domestically for 5 years and have at least 20 planes before they could fly overseas routes.
Yeah.
It was meant to ensure domestic connectivity first. Mallya bought Air Deccan for $137 million. He frames it very differently, though. He calls it elimination of a disruptor.
A disruptor. How so?
Air Deccan was the original low-cost carrier, famous for its 1 rupee ticket gimmick. While that wasn't sustainable for them, it completely changed what people expected to pay for flights. It drove prices down across the board. So, Mallya argues buying Deccan wasn't just about getting international routes faster. It was about getting rid of a competitor who was making it impossible for anyone to make money in the domestic market. He insists it wasn't the sole reason.
So industry consolidation and stopping a race to the bottom on price.
That's his argument. Kingfisher Red became the low-cost brand after the acquisition, kept separate from the premium Kingfisher First service.
But even with Deccan, the financial pressure kept mounting. And that led to maybe the most damaging part of the story, not paying employees.
Yeah, that's where it gets really painful.
Yeah.
The working capital just wasn't there. They couldn't pay fuel bills, airport charges, caterers, and then salaries. Mallya's side of this is that 260 crores of UB Group money, specifically earmarked for Kingfisher's salaries, got frozen by the Karnataka High Court. He says the banks objected to releasing it.
Okay, so he's blaming frozen funds.
He is. He strongly denies claims he was taking a huge 33-crore salary himself while employees went unpaid. He says international staff got paid because ticket money collected overseas, like in England, was available there. Look, he publicly apologizes for the airline failing and for the salaries not being paid. Says he takes responsibility but insists he made every single effort to find the money. He also addressed the tragic suicide of an employee's wife, expressing sympathy but stating reports indicated it stemmed from a marital dispute, not solely Kingfisher's issues. Though, obviously, the financial stress couldn't have helped anyone.
Right. He points to frozen funds, legal blockages, but for the public, and especially those employees, seeing unpaid salaries alongside his, well, very public, lavish lifestyle, that contrast created enormous anger, didn't it? How do those two narratives coexist?
That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You have his explanation, legal hurdles, frozen accounts, settlement offers being rejected. But then you have the optics, the pictures, the stories of the lifestyle, juxtaposed with people struggling without pay. That visual, that emotional narrative is incredibly powerful. It often drowns out the complex financial or legal arguments, rightly or wrongly. Public perception just solidified against him very strongly.
And then the more serious allegations started the willful defaulter tag, claims of siphoning money. What's his counter to those?
He denies siphoning money. Like the 35 million French property he denies Kingfisher funds were used, the private jet. He says that was a Kingfisher asset, used for company business. On the defaulting, he claims he made 4 settlement offers to the banks between 2012 and 2015, even offering settlements before the Supreme Court. Says they were refused because the banks wanted more, which, he points out, they eventually got anyway through seizing and selling assets. He fights the willful defaulter label by arguing, how could I pay if my assets were frozen? He claims they made it impossible for him to settle even if he had the liquid cash.
This all leads up to March 2016 when he leaves India. Very controversial timing. What's his version of that departure?
He says it was totally routine, planned well in advance. He left on March 2nd for a World Motorsport Council meeting of the FIA in Geneva. He claims he even informed the finance minister at the time, Arun Jaitley, that he was traveling. He completely dismisses the media stories about a Supreme Court hearing the next day or him leaving with like 55 suitcases, calls it nonsense. He also emphasizes he'd been a permanent resident of the UK since 1992 and held non-resident Indian NRI status since '88. So traveling in and out was normal for him.
But very soon after he left, things escalated. His passport was canceled.
Yeah, that happened quickly. Suspended April 15th, revoked April 24th, 2016. The official reason given by the Ministry of External Affairs was that he failed to respond to summons from the Enforcement Directorate, the ED. Mallya claims he did respond, asking for more time to sort out funds. He argues the passport revocation effectively trapped him in the UK, making it impossible to return even if he wanted to, which he claims he did.
And that led to the arrest in the UK and the extradition fight.
Exactly. Arrested, but granted bail. It's important to remember, as he points out, the UK courts in extradition cases only determine if there's a prima facie case, basically. Enough evidence to warrant a trial in India. They don't determine guilt or innocence.
Okay, let's break down the core charges he's fighting in that extradition case. What are they, and what's his specific defense for each?
All right, first, misrepresentation. The CBI, India's main investigating agency, alleges he lied about Kingfisher's financial health to IDBI Bank to get a loan and colluded with bank managers. Mallya's response. He says the loan was approved by IDBI's full board, which included people from the Reserve Bank of India and the Finance Ministry. He also says the brand valuation report they used, done by Grant Thornton and Brand Finance, was accepted by the bank. He didn't misrepresent it.
Okay, what about siphoning or money laundering?
The CBI alleged 423 crores were siphoned off for unrelated expenses. Mallya counters that, look, over half an airline's costs are in foreign currency anyway, leases, maintenance, fuel hedging. The ED went much bigger, alleging 3,547 crores were laundered. Mallya is basically saying, show me the proof. How did I launder it? Where did I steal it from? He demands evidence.
And the total amount owed is also confusing. We always hear 9,000 crores, but Mallya says it's less. What's going on with the numbers?
Yeah, this is a big point of contention for him. He holds up the Debt Recovery Tribunal DRT certificate, which states the principal debt for Kingfisher Airlines, the amount he guaranteed, was 6,203 crores. He says he was perplexed when Prime Minister Modi publicly quoted 9,000 crores.
So where does the 9,000 crore figure come from?
It almost certainly includes massive amounts of accumulated interest, possibly penalties too, calculated over several years. The principal might have been around 6,200 crore, but compound interest on that scale adds up incredibly fast. So both figures might be correct, depending on whether you mean original principal or total outstanding dues, including interest.
But here's maybe the most stunning number, the recovery. Reports say over 14,000 crores have now been recovered from his assets. That's way more than even the lower principal figure. What does that mean? Does that change the story?
It's a crucial point and potentially a game changer in how you view the whole thing. The Ministry of Finance's own report for 2024-25 states 14,131.66 crores has been recovered from the Mallya case and given back to the banks. That's roughly 2.5 times the principal debt Mallya acknowledges. For him, this is proof. He argues, if I was a thief, how did they recover 2.5 times the money?
So his argument is, business failed, yes, but the money's been recovered and then some. So where's the fraud or theft?
Exactly. It shifts the narrative, potentially from outright theft to a complex case of business failure, followed by a very successful, albeit protracted, asset recovery process by the banks and authorities. It raises questions about whether the criminal charges hold the same weight now that the financial loss to the banks has seemingly been more than covered. He uses this recovery figure to argue he's not a chore, the Hindi word often used for a thief or embezzler. He says the root cause the money has been dealt with.
What about the banks themselves in all this? Does he feel they've been transparent?
He claims not. He says he's asked them repeatedly, like 15 times, for a final statement of account showing how the recovered money has been applied against the debt, but hasn't received one. He says there's even a petition pending in the Karnataka High Court about this. He calls it ridiculous, and asks if other business people face the same lack of clarity from banks after recovery.
All this leads him to feel he's been singled out, right? A poster boy, a political football. How much of that is defensible versus maybe the result of his own very public profile?
He absolutely believes he's been targeted, made an example of, largely for political reasons by the current government. He points to animosity, maybe jealousy. His argument is that in India, unlike elsewhere, if your business fails, you're immediately branded a fraud. He lists other airlines, other business people who defaulted, but didn't face the same kind of public hounding or legal pursuit.
But the unpaid salaries, the lifestyle, that surely played a role in public anger, separate from politics.
Oh, undoubtedly. It's hard to separate the two. He also criticizes what he calls extreme government interference as a challenge for businesses in Indian bureaucracy, political hurdles. He even candidly admits to having to maintain good relations with state chief ministers, which sometimes involved requests for, well, cash, alcohol, vehicles, particularly around election times. That itself is quite an admission.
So how is he living now? Stuck in the UK, fighting extradition. What's life like?
He describes it as semi-retired. Focused on his dogs, he has 6 his classic cars and running his other businesses, which are mostly still in the alcohol sector. He admits life has slowed down dramatically. Being confined to one country after decades of flying everywhere constantly, that's a huge game changer for him. He says he's tough, tries not to let the media narrative get to him, feels there have been deliberate attempts to break him down.
Does he regret Kingfisher Airlines?
Deeply, it seems. He says the failure hurts me more than anything else. He wasn't used to business failure. He poured his blood, sweat, and tears into it. His biggest fear now, extradition, spending the rest of his life in an Indian jail. But he says he's prepared for the worst and will keep fighting in court. He genuinely seems to believe he'll win on merit because he insists he's done nothing wrong. He says he'd return to India, but only if he was assured a fair trial and a dignified existence. End quote. And he mentions being grateful for friends like Kiran Mazumdar-Shah, who still publicly support him despite the potential backlash, people he grew up with.
What a journey. We've gone from that strict upbringing, the discipline, through the sheer strategic brilliance that built UB Group, the creation of that unforgettable King of Good Times image, and then the crash of Kingfisher Airlines, the accusations, the departure, the legal battles. We've heard his perspective, seen how business, government policy, public perception all got tangled up. And those recovery numbers, they certainly add another layer, don't they?
They really do. It highlights just how powerful narratives are, especially today. With information coming at us constantly, the full picture, the complete truth, can be incredibly hard to grasp. We've tried to lay out the facts as presented in the sources, including Mallya's own detailed account, his claims about settlement offers, and that significant reported recovery of funds by the banks.
So, as you think about all this, maybe the final question isn't just about Vijay Mallya himself, it's broader. In this world awash with information, where opinions form so fast, often driven by media narratives and sometimes political agendas, how do you navigate these complex stories? How do you tell the difference between a genuine business failure and alleged fraud when the lines get so blurry and the stakes are so incredibly high?
It's definitely something to consider. We hope this deep dive has provided a more informed, maybe more nuanced view of one of India's most talked about financial sagas.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.